After the movie was released, my girlfriend's childhood friend publicly declared his love for her in a high-profile manner. "You are the only leading lady in my life." I casually liked the post, but the next second, a prompt popped up saying the post was invisible. My phone immediately rang with Jisu's special notification sound. "Joshua and I are just friends. If there was anything between us, it would have happened a long time ago, and there would be no need for you." I exited the message and saw that Jisu had changed her official account background to a photo from the awards ceremony. She and Joshua were standing close together, holding trophies and gazing at each other affectionately. I couldn't help but laugh at myself, but I felt surprisingly calm inside. There's no need for her to come back to me. A disloyal lover should be discarded. English translation. The villa was filled with Ecuadorian roses, airlifted especially for Jisu, her favorite flower. The butler and maid stood by nervously, unsure of what to do. I saw their unease and calmly turned off my phone. No need to wait. Serve the food. When Jisu returned, I had already finished dinner and was preparing to go to bed. Today was the Baishue Awards ceremony. After Bai Yuexin won the award, she texted me, saying she wanted to celebrate with me properly when she got home. As soon as I heard she was nominated, I started preparing a surprise for her, having flowers and food airlifted in advance just in case. After receiving her message, I immediately put down my work and waited for her to come home to celebrate. I prepared so much, but instead of waiting for her, I waited for a scolding. I put down my phone, feeling very calm inside. I didn't question what Joshua's post meant, nor was I upset about their intimate photo. I wasn't even offended by her unfounded accusations. Jisu stood in the living room and, seeing that I didn't react, walked over and sat down beside me. She looked at me with a smile. "Why didn't you wait for me to come back?" I glanced at her indifferently, and the butler beside me spoke up. "Jisu, it's already 1 a.m. Jisu was suddenly stunned and looked away guiltily, softening her voice to explain. After the awards ceremony, everyone from the crew went to the after party, and I couldn't be the only one to leave. "Isn't the red wine opened yet? I'll have a drink with you." I looked up at Jisu's delicate face. She had a soft expression with a hint of hidden laughter, and she looked at me with apologetic eyes. She was always like this. If she was in a bad mood, she would blame me indiscriminately, and after venting, she would start to show weakness and apologize pitifully. Before I could speak, Jisu had someone open the red wine. She personally poured a glass of wine. "Vernon, let me feed you." She leaned against my shoulder with her delicate body and handed the wine glass to my mouth. I didn't refuse and opened my mouth. Suddenly, Joshua's special ringtone rang, and Jisu's face changed instantly. She hurried to the balcony. She hurriedly put down the wine glass, and the swaying red wine spilled all over me. My pristine white clothes were stained, and the bright red color spread irregularly. After hanging up the phone happily, Jisu saw me covered in mess. There was still joy on her face, and she looked at me with dissatisfaction and blame. "Vernon, your clothes are dirty. Go change them and go to bed early." One moment, she was gently and patiently comforting me. After hanging up with Joshua, she immediately changed her expression and looked at me with impatience. I nodded in agreement and politely asked, "Okay, what about you? What? Aren't you going to rest so late?" Jisu suddenly changed her expression and looked at me reproachfully. "Vernon, what are you saying? Joshua is drunk tonight, and he's alone in Haishur without anyone to take care of him. We've known each other since we were young, and his parents aren't around, so I have to take care of him." I calmly nodded in agreement. "Okay, go ahead." Jisu was speechless after hearing what I said, as if she didn't expect me to say that. "I'm going to take care of Joshua. Do you agree?" I glanced at her indifferently. "Why wouldn't I agree? He's drunk and no one is taking care of him, so you can go." Jisu seemed to hear something unbelievable, and she couldn't recover for a long time. After a while, she suddenly smiled sarcastically and looked at me with disdain. "Vernon, if you don't want me to go, you can just say so. There's no need to play hard to get." I really didn't understand Jisu's way of thinking. She said she was going to take care of Joshua herself, and I agreed. Yet she thinks I'm playing hard to get. I coldly looked away, and no longer wanted to dwell on this topic. You go quickly, Joshua must be waiting for you. After saying that, I got up and went back to my room without waiting for her reaction. It took Jisoo several days to return home drunk. Her eyes were glazed over, clearly intoxicated. Seeing me sitting on the couch without saying a word, she naturally sat next to me and leaned on me weakly. Vernon, why didn't you come to pick me up? At noon, Jisoo had texted me, asking me to pick her up from the set. I saw it but ignored it. In the evening, Jisoo called the driver, asking why I hadn't come to pick her up yet. When the driver looked at me inquiringly, I ignored him, and the driver drove straight home. She nestled in my arms and whined softly. Vernon, my shoulders are so sore. Can you give me a massage? For 3 years of marriage, every time Jisoo came home and said she was tired, I would gently massage her shoulders. Even though I was also a busy CEO myself, working overtime until late every night and dealing with endless matters. But in front of Jisoo, I was still willing to be a considerate husband. She habitually moved to the side, wanting to lie on my lap. But I suddenly got up and made her lie directly on the sofa. Yesterday, Joshua updated phone with the caption, interpreting the new script with my sweetheart. In those photos, the two of them were either gazing deeply at each other or leaning on each other. Joshua was standing by the wall, one arm supporting her side and the other arm around her waist. The two of them were face to face, staring at each other with eyes that seemed to be drawn together, as if they were about to kiss the next second. This was the so-called innocence that Jisoo had mentioned, and she could still brazenly say there was nothing going on. My rejection stunned Jisoo, as if she hadn't expected me to be so resistant. Her face turned ugly. Vernon, you didn't come to pick me up, and you won't even massage me. It's been several days, and you're still sulking. How petty can you be? I'm not sulking. I just think you're dirty. Before I could finish, Jisoo interrupted impatiently. We've been married for 3 years, and you're still suspicious. I've already told you, Joshua and I are just good friends. You insist on thinking that there's something between us, and you make a fuss about it every day. I've known Joshua for so long, if there was anything, it would have happened a long time ago, and there would be no need for you to marry me. How can someone as suspicious as you manage a company? Oh, I forgot. You're the only one left in your family. I used to want to be a painter. With my brother inheriting the company, I could have lived a carefree life and pursued my dreams. But then my brother had an accident, and I had no choice but to give up painting. Seeing my parents in so much pain, I put down my paintbrush, abandoned my dreams, put on a suit, and worked hard to shoulder the huge company. When we were dating, Jisoo learned about my experience and felt so sorry for me, saying she would always be with me. After marriage, when I confessed my past, it became a sharp knife in her hand, stabbing me in the heart. The sharp and cold knife hurt the most. Every time we had an argument, she would use this knife to defeat me, easily crushing my emotions, and then proudly tilt her chin, watching me collapse and feel lost. But this time, I didn't even frown. I looked at her calmly. Are you finished? I'm finished. I'm going to sleep. When the door closed, I could still hear Jisoo's hysterical shouting and the sound of things being thrown. In the past, it was always me who was emotionally broken by anger. Now the roles have reversed, and I've become the spectator. Seeing her go crazy, I felt a long-lost sense of relief. It turns out that those who don't love are not only free, but also incredibly clear-headed. Jisoo and I were in a cold war. Or rather, I unilaterally ignored her and cut off all contact with her. A month after the Cold War, she suddenly came to the company to find me. English translation: everyone in the company knew her and brought her to my office as usual. I had just opened the door after a meeting and saw her sitting on the sofa. Sitting back in my chair, I asked calmly, "Is there something you need?" She hesitated for a moment before saying hesitantly, "The crew is having a gathering, and I want you to come with me." "I'm not free, go by yourself." Jisoo was silent for a moment, then hugged my arm. "Vernon, don't be angry. You haven't talked to me in so long. Aren't you still upset?" Since we couldn't make a scene in the company, I had to go with her and see what tricks she was going to play. Seeing that I agreed, Jisoo immediately beamed with joy and clung to my arm, acting coquettishly all the way. When we entered the private room, the director, assistant director, and main actors of the crew were all there. Apart from me, there were no outsiders. When Joshua saw us come in, he said exaggeratedly, "Vernon is really a busy man. We've all been waiting for more than an hour." But then again, Vernon is the CEO, and he's always dealing with big things, so naturally he's busy. How can we small-time people compare? As usual, every time we met, Joshua would make sarcastic remarks. In the past, I endured it for Jisu's sake. But this time, I just smiled faintly and agreed. Indeed, what's there to be busy about for a small-time actor like you? Joshua's face immediately darkened, and he glared at me fiercely. He looked at me gnashing his teeth, but when Jisu came in, he changed his expression and pitifully excused himself. "XINU, let me apologize to Vernon first. I don't know where I offended Vernon. He said I'm a small-time actor." What he said seemed like an apology, but in fact, he was complaining to Jisu that I was deliberately making things difficult for him. Bai Yuexin subconsciously stood in front of him, looking at me with a displeased expression. "Vernon, if you have something to say it to me. Don't make things difficult for Joshua." "It's okay. Didn't he say he's a small-time actor himself?" I shrugged indifferently and sat down in a chair. Seeing the awkward atmosphere, everyone else tried to liven things up, and Jisu, for once, didn't take the opportunity to make trouble. She just sat quietly beside me. The atmosphere became lively, and after a few rounds of drinks, someone suggested playing Truth or Dare. The bottle spun around the table for a few rounds and finally stopped slowly, with the mouth pointing at Joshua. Amidst the cheers of everyone, he chose Dare. Someone immediately spoke up. "Choose someone in the room, give them a piggyback ride and squat 50 times. As soon as the words came out, the atmosphere in the room was ignited, and everyone was eagerly waiting to see the fun. Joshua's gaze swept over everyone in the room and finally fixed on Jisu. "XINU, all the girls here have boyfriends, and the guys are too heavy. You'll definitely help me, right?" As soon as he finished speaking, everyone's eyes turned to me. Joshua said that the other girls had boyfriends. But didn't Bai Yuexin have one? She did, and her husband was sitting right beside her. If the guys were too heavy, why didn't he say he was too weak? Everyone was watching the show, waiting for Jisu and me to react. Under everyone's gaze, I just smiled lightly. "Since he's asking you for help, why are you looking at me? Hurry up." Upon hearing this, Jisu froze in place, her eyes filled with disbelief. "Vernon, are you sure you don't mind?" I smiled slightly. "It's just a game. Besides, it's just a piggyback ride. It's not like we haven't been more intimate." My words were like a bolt from the blue, shocking everyone present. English translation. Jisu jumped up as if her tail had been stepped on. "No, Joshua and I are innocent. Everyone can testify." I lowered my head and played with my phone, without looking up. "If you say there's nothing, then there's nothing. I understand." After replying to the message, I looked up, and the room was still silent. Everyone sat quietly. I asked in confusion, "Go on, you haven't done the punishment yet?" Being ignored by me again and again, Jisu's face turned ugly. She glared at me fiercely and walked over to Joshua angrily. She actively put her arms around Joshua's neck and leaned weakly against his chest. And Joshua also put his arms around her waist. The two of them hugged each other so naturally that it was obvious to everyone that they were not innocent. After 50 squats, Joshua was panting and seemed unable to hold on any longer. He let go of her and they fell together. Joshua hugged her tightly, and Jisu still had her arms around his neck. The two of them nestled close together, and they didn't separate for a long time. Jisu stared at me without blinking, as if she was waiting for me to come over and pick her up. Joshua also looked at me provocatively, but I just clapped my hands. "Waiter, open a bottle of Hideseek. Good stamina, good performance reward." Except for the waiter, who was amused and went to get the wine, everyone else was stunned, and the room was silent for a long time. After reacting, Joshua's face turned red with anger, his veins bulged, and the force with which he held Jisu tightened. Jisu was so hurt that she didn't immediately start accusing him, but instead pried Joshua's arm away and got up herself. She looked at me with teary eyes. Vernon, I fell so hard, you helped me rub it. I stared at her intently. For the first time, I realized how stupid Jisoo was. My words clearly insulted her too, treating her as a plaything for my amusement. But she didn't realize it. She just thought I was jealous. I shook my head in my heart. Love really blinds people. After being together for so long, I only realized that beneath Jisoo's glamorous appearance, there was such a stupid and arrogant soul. Seeing that I hadn't responded to her for a long time, the expression on Jisoo's face froze. Vernon, everyone is watching. It's just a game. Don't be a sore loser. I calmly took out my phone. I'm not being a sore loser. Do you want me to book a hotel for you to continue? Seeing that the situation was getting out of control, the director quickly stood up to mediate. He raised his glass to me. Come on, let's all toast to Vernon. If it weren't for Vernon, how would we have had the chance to taste a bottle of hide-seek worth tens of millions? Hearing this, everyone raised their glasses, and various compliments were made. Jisoo also came back to her senses and sat beside me, calmly accepting everyone's compliments. I just raised my glass symbolically but didn't drink. People in the entertainment industry are very good at reading the situation. Seeing that I was always accommodating to Jisoo, they kept saying that she was charming and that I was a gold digger. Some even said that I was a lickspittle for her, full of money but no taste, and that I didn't have anything in common with Bayueshin, a movie queen, and that Joshua was the one who was spiritually compatible with her. I've heard these words for 3 years, and I don't know how many times I've argued with Jisoo about it. But every time I compromised, seeing that I didn't pursue it further, they thought the matter was over, and the director started the conversation again. Vernon, we're still short of investment for this drama. No one comes for nothing without a reason. There's no such thing as a free lunch. I wonder why Jisoo was in such a good mood today. It turns out that the new drama needs investment again. Accepting everyone's eager gaze, Jisoo straightened her back proudly and gently served me some food. Vernon, this drama has a good prospect, and the actors are also very good. It has the potential to be a big hit. So why don't you invest 50 million first? Hearing Jisoo say 50 million right away, everyone, including Joshua, subconsciously looked at me, waiting for me to nod. At the same time, the door of the private room was opened, and the assistant came in. Vernon, the documents have been printed. As soon as he finished speaking, the director couldn't wait to pick up the conversation. Vernon is so generous, he's always thinking about XINU, and he's willing to invest 50 million just like that. Come on, let's all toast to Vernon again. I had the assistant hand the documents to Jisoo. Sign it. Jisoo took it Jinshruda and was about to sign her name as the party in the last place as usual. But when she saw the contents of the document, her eyes widened in shock. Divorce agreement? English translation. Jisoo looked at me with bloodshot eyes, as if she couldn't believe that I would give her a divorce agreement. Before, no matter how much she made a fuss, I didn't dare to mention divorce. Facing her doubts, I accepted patiently. You've been practicing acting, so you must know what the only leading lady means. If she's the only one, how can there be a third person? Since you and your childhood sweetheart are so affectionate, I can't be the bad guy. I'll just let you be together. After saying that, I looked at Bayueshin quietly and urged, just sign it, and then you can finally be together. Jisoo's face turned pale, and regardless of the many people in the private room, she grabbed my arm tightly and looked at me with teary eyes. Vernon, I was wrong before. I didn't consider your feelings. I know I was wrong. I will change. As long as you don't get a divorce, you can ask me to do anything you want. Please give me another chance. I will treat you well. I smiled, but forcefully pulled her hands away and took a few steps back. No need to explain. Since you and Joshua have such a pure relationship, just be together simply. I don't. I was just taking care of him at someone else's request. I don't like him. The only person I love is you, Vernon. Jisoo shouted anxiously, and Joshua, hearing her words, his handsome face twisted, his fists clenched, and he glared at me, gnashing his teeth. Everyone in the private room was shocked by this scene and sat there trembling, not daring to say a word. This scene was really ugly. A look of disgust flashed across my face. and I took a few more steps back away from Jisoo. What are you yelling for? I'm talking to you reasonably. What are you making a fuss about? It's not like whoever is louder is right. Back then, every time I caught Jisoo and Joshua acting intimate, I tried to reason with her first. But she just looked at me calmly, like looking at an unreasonable child, without any response. And then she would use sharp words to stab at my wounds, causing me to constantly collapse and break down. Every time I lost my temper and shouted angrily, I was helpless. I was like a trapped beast, struggling in the cage called Jisoo, until I was bruised and battered. Now, the me who used to be provoked by Jisoo's words in 3 or 2 sentences no longer existed. The one who broke down was her. Looking at her pale face and shaky figure, I felt incredibly relieved. I opened my mouth and said coldly, piercing her fantasy, "Just sign it. It won't look good if it goes to court." Jisoo stepped forward and tried to grab my arm, but I dodged to the side, and the disgust on my face was undisguised. It was like a sharp knife stabbing her heart. Jisoo looked at me pitifully. "Vernon, can we go home and talk about it?" It turns out she knew she was embarrassing herself too. For 3 years of marriage, every time she criticized me in front of others and fooled around with Joshua behind my back. Why didn't she know she was embarrassing herself? I am a man who stands tall. But I am also a person, and I can get hurt and feel pain. I turned my head and looked directly into Jisoo's eyes. There was pleading and regret in her eyes, but no love. I just smiled contemptuously. "I'm going home, there's no us. The villa is mine, and it has nothing to do with you after the divorce. Your luggage, oh no, where do you have any luggage? Everything you wear and use was bought by me, just throw it away." Jisoo's legs went weak, and she collapsed to the ground. English translation: Joshua hurried forward to help her up, but Jisoo pushed him away. She glared at him fiercely and cursed nonstop. "Get out, it's all your fault. If it weren't for you, Vernon wouldn't want to divorce me." She still tried to shift the blame at this time. What a great scene of turning against each other. But I didn't pay any attention to their farce. Seeing that my purpose had been achieved, I left without hesitation. Jisoo chased after me, stumbling behind. I walked quickly, and she stumbled and ran, regardless of the people around her. "Vernon, wait for me. I'm not getting a divorce, you hear me?" "Ah!" There was a cry of pain from behind. Jisoo ran too fast and bumped into someone and fell. She sat there, rubbing the place where she was hit, and subconsciously looked up at me. But she didn't see the expected scene. I walked away without looking back, not even pausing for a second. "Vernon, come back. How can you leave me alone? You said you would love me forever. Vernon, please come back and take a look at me." As my footsteps faded away, the cries behind me gradually became smaller and disappeared. Despite being warned, Jisoo still appeared at the door of the villa. She pressed the code over and over again, but it prompted the wrong password over and over again. Just like our wrong marriage, it looked perfect on the surface, but it had changed inside long ago. Jisoo went from being cautious at first to becoming increasingly anxious and restless until she had a breakdown. She started going crazy at the door, pounding and kicking the door, and even slapping herself. The door was of good quality and remained motionless. And after Jisoo vented, she seemed tired and sat on the ground panting. Perhaps because of too many unpleasant things recently, she broke down and cried loudly, cursing while crying, looking like a madman. I sat quietly in front of the monitor, watching her go crazy. Perhaps after tossing and turning, Jisoo finally realized that I wouldn't open the door for her. She rushed to the monitor at the door, as if she knew I was watching her, and pointed at me, gnashing her teeth. "Vernon, you have guts." I apologized and admitted my mistake. "And I've lost face in front of everyone in the crew. Everyone in the circle knows about it. What else do you want?" "Vernon, I know you're watching. If you have the guts, speak up." She tried to provoke me as usual, and then watch me lose my temper. This trick had always worked on me, but this time it didn't work. I looked at the clawing and screaming Jisoo outside, as if I was looking at a clown. Then I contacted the security guard and had Jisoo kicked out. I wouldn't say another word to her. I would just calmly watch her break down. I would do to her what she had done to me. English translation: After that night, Jisoo seemed to suddenly become idle. She kept calling and texting me every day, and even came to the company to find me. I couldn't stand it anymore, so I blocked all her contact information and told everyone in the company not to let her in again. Perhaps seeing how determined I was, Jisoo stopped coming after a while and started to hype up her CP with Joshua. Weibo was full of their publicity photos, and the two of them interacted every day, like a real couple. There were netizens who didn't know the truth and commented, "Isn't Jisoo married? She's still flirting with others. Is this openly cheating?" As soon as the comment was posted, it was immediately attacked by their mindless fans. XI and Yu and Joshua are first loves. They've known each other for a long time. People with a guilty conscience think everything is dirty. That's right, if they really had something, it would have happened a long time ago, and there would be no need for that Vernon. The netizen who was scolded was originally just curious and asked, but seeing so many brainless fans scolding him, he couldn't swallow his anger and started to fight back. As the matter got bigger and bigger, I knew about it when it was already on the hot search. Friends who didn't know the truth sent messages to comfort me, but I didn't care at all. Let her make a big fuss if she wants to. The netizens waited for a long time, but didn't see me reply, and they were very disappointed. Jisoo felt even more that I was jealous and sulking, and she insisted that I was trying to keep her. So she interacted with Joshua in various ways and kept posting intimate photos. It was clear to everyone that they were not innocent. The matter between Jisoo and Joshua was like a TV series. Now, not only the fans, but also the passers-by knew about the emotional entanglement between the three of us, and they were all waiting for me, the rightful owner, to come out and eat melons. Coincidentally, a paparazzi broke a group of photos. Actress Jisoo and a man kissed passionately by the river. Shortly after the photos hit the hot search, Jisoo posted a dynamic, "Brave to pursue love. The one who is not loved in love is the third party." This was simply slapping everyone in the face, and the hot search instantly exploded, and both fans and passers-by were excited. Seeing this, my personal account, which had been silent for a long time, also started to update. First, it was the divorce agreement between me and Jisoo. Second, it was the detailed information of the movies and TV series that I invested in Jisoo's name. Third, it was various intimate photos and hotel records of Jisoo and Joshua. As soon as the dynamic was released, the internet exploded again, and public opinion instantly turned to one side. I smiled, my heart calm and undisturbed. Originally, I just wanted to divorce Jisoo and have a peaceful separation, but she didn't know when to stop. She provoked me again and again, stepping on my bottom line. If you are kind to others, others will bully you. If you are kind to horses, others will ride you. Since she likes to be high profile, I'll let her become famous. Overnight, Jisoo lost 1 million fans. It kept dropping, and netizens who love to eat melons came to hear the news, and the public opinion became louder and louder. Jisoo and Joshua's Weibo accounts were both overwhelmed. Seeing the endless ridicule and abuse from netizens, they chose to close the comment section in self-deception. Many partners also sent termination letters to Jisoo and Joshua to avoid their endorsements from affecting their own image. In the past, Jisoo was a popular actress, and people in the circle chased after her to cooperate, and her fans were enthusiastically supporting her, with a promising future. After falling from the altar in one fell swoop, she couldn't bear such a gap and started posting her depression diagnosis on the internet, live streaming and crying, saying that she was driven crazy by me. She wanted to play the victim and be pitiful, but everyone didn't buy it. There was no comfort as expected, and the screen was full of abuse and sarcasm, saying that she was shameless, had no self-respect, and was debauched. Her fans didn't dare to speak up for her, for fear of being scolded for her again, and they were as quiet as quails. Looking at those words of abuse, Jisoo couldn't keep up the act anymore, and she started smashing things in frustration, and her phone was also broken, and the live broadcast was paused. When I heard this news, I had just won a cooperation of several small goals. I opened Weibo, and the screen was full of netizens' screenshots of Jisoo's expression packs. I laughed lightly. So ugly. How could I have fallen in love with her in the first place? English translation. I received another message from Jisoo through a mutual friend. XINU is in critical condition, and you need to sign the surgery consent form. Critical condition? I had always been very concerned about Jisoo's physical examination reports. She had a full physical examination just 2 months ago, and there were no diseases. How could she suddenly need surgery? I asked firmly, "What kind of surgery? I won't go if you don't explain clearly." Perhaps seeing my attitude was too cold, the other side was silent for a long time before stammering. "Abortion surgery, an ectopic pregnancy requires an abortion." I couldn't help but sneer. What does it have to do with me? The child is not mine, why should I sign? It's ridiculous, whose child is it? Go find whoever it belongs to. Why should I bear the blame? It's shameless enough. Perhaps stung by my cold words, Jisoo snatched the phone away. "Vernon, I'm having an abortion. Don't you have anything to say to me?" "Well, I wish you a speedy recovery. A year ago, I was in a car accident on my way back from a business trip and needed a family member to sign the consent form. My parents were out of town and couldn't come back, and I didn't have any other family members to sign. So the only person I could find was Jisoo. In a daze, I called Jisoo and told her about my car accident. But unexpectedly, what greeted me was a tirade of accusations. Aren't you still awake? Sign it yourself. I'm busy, I don't have time for this. I have a lot of work recently. I'm so busy that I don't even touch the ground. And I don't have the time for that anyway. Besides, even if I went, I couldn't do anything. I can't cook or help you up. You have time to call me. Why don't you find a nurse yourself? That's it, I'm hanging up." In the end, I could only try my best to stay awake, tremblingly signed my name on the surgery consent form, and the blood on my hand stained the white paper, just like the hurt Jisoo had caused me. I stayed in the hospital for a long time that time, and Jisoo never came to see me once. I thought she was busy with work, until one day, I saw a live broadcast variety show that Jisoo and Joshua participated in. She said that because she knew someone was coming, she pushed aside other schedules and came to accompany him specially. It was a slow-paced life variety show that recorded the artists' daily lives. The two of them were so intimate and taciturn in the variety show that it made people feel full of pink bubbles in the air. I just lay quietly in bed and watched, my heart aching. She said she was too busy with work, that she had to focus on her career, and couldn't accompany me, and even didn't want to take a look. But she pushed aside her work and accompanied Joshua on a variety show day and night. "Vernon, are you listening to me?" Seeing me silent, Jisoo became agitated and questioned me loudly. I came back to my senses and said half-jokingly, "Then I'll help you find a nurse? But you have to pay for it yourself." Jisoo was stunned, as if she didn't expect me to say such a thing, and her tone was full of disbelief. "Vernon, I'm going to have an abortion. Don't you feel sorry for me?" That made me laugh. When I was seriously injured in bed, why didn't she feel sorry for me? Besides, the child in her belly is not mine, and the suffering she is going through is not caused by me. Why should I feel sorry for her? Remember to sign the divorce agreement and contact my lawyer for the follow-up matters. Don't look for me anymore. I will notify all my friends, and anyone who helps you pass on messages will be blocked. To be honest, after being married for so long, everyone around me knows what kind of person Jisoo is. I decided to get a divorce, and anyone with a conscience would support me, instead of acting as a peacemaker for Jisoo. Jisoo reacted for half a moment before finding her voice. "Vernon, do you have to be so cruel? Do you have to make everyone laugh at us? Don't you love me anymore? How can you not love me anymore? Even if you don't love me anymore, we can still be friends." There was pleading and disbelief in her words, but I just affirmed firmly, "I don't love you anymore. There's no need to keep in touch. I feel disgusted being friends with you. Have they seen enough jokes since you got married? Now that we're divorced, I can't wait to announce it to the world." After saying that, I hung up the phone without waiting for her to react. English translation. Later, a friend sent me a video. In the video, Joshua pushed open the ward door, only to see Jisoo on the phone with me. Listening to Jisoo still trying to win me back, he was stunned for a moment, and the lunchbox in his hand fell to the ground, spilling all the food inside. Stewed cabbage with vermicelli, stir-fried vegetables. She's going to give up the child and still eat these things. Is this the true love Jisoo pursues? The sound of my voice from the phone was like a slap in Joshua's face. His expression turned ugly, and he didn't even have time to clean up the food on the ground. He slammed the door shut with a bang. The two of them had a violent argument. You're pregnant with my child, and you're still entangled with him. Didn't you say you would divorce him? Can't I regret it? Joshua, you said you would give me happiness, but what about it? Because of you, I've lost everything, and now I have to help you find resources everywhere. Clang and clang, things were thrown all over the floor. Joshua, you waste of space, the biggest regret of my life is being with you. So what? It's too late now. Who else can you be with besides me? Who else will want you? Joshua simply gave up and said shamelessly, the doctor said you're in good health. This ectopic pregnancy was an accident. Just have the surgery and take a good rest for a few days, and then give me a big fat boy. As soon as he finished speaking, the ward suddenly became quiet. After a moment, Jisoo seemed to be stimulated and suddenly went crazy, pouncing on Joshua and fighting with him, and kept muttering, I'm a strong woman in my career. I won the 100 Flowers Award. Why should I stay at home and give birth to a child for you? Vernon doesn't dare. What are you, Joshua? What are you? She looked crazy and everyone was frightened, seeing her desperately biting Joshua. The people next to her quickly stepped forward to stop her, and they were almost unable to hold her back. During the struggle, Jisoo was pushed to the ground hard, and after a cry of pain, she curled up together, and blood was flowing from under her body, scaring everyone. The doctor hurriedly pushed her into the operating room and rescued her for a long time before she was out of danger. I didn't watch the rest of the video and casually turned off the screen. The last time I saw Jisoo was in the defendant's seat in court. This divorce case lasted for more than half a year and finally ended. It wasn't that the case was difficult to fight, but that Jisoo was too difficult to deal with. At first, she kept finding various reasons to delay, and even refused to cooperate on the grounds that she still had feelings for me. Later, seeing that I was determined to get a divorce, she wanted to share my property. When we got married, I loved her deeply and wanted to give her everything, so we didn't sign a prenuptial agreement. Now she wants to take half of my property, but she was the wrongdoer, and I had a lot of evidence of her cheating, and besides, as a billionaire boss, my legal team was not vegetarian. This time, the court issued a final ultimatum to her, saying that if she didn't come, she would default to my divorce request. When the verdict came down, she collapsed on the ground. After a long time, she had aged a lot, and she was no longer as glamorous as before. She had wrinkles on her face, her skin became rough, her clothes were simple, and her delicate hands became rough, which showed that she had been struggling for a living. Most importantly, there was no light in her eyes. Joshua pulled her up roughly. Come on, who's waiting for you? Yueshin shivered, and her eyes involuntarily drifted towards me, looking lonely and pitiful. But what does that have to do with me? I strode out of the court and towards my bright future. The sun was shining brightly, the wind was gentle, and everything was reviving. Everything will be better in the future.